Welcome to the show, everybody. Joseph Robert Camo, the fantasy football counselor. Got an exciting episode here for you. It's a how-to-win type of show. Top 10 fantasy football draft tips. It's going to give you guys some practical, hands-on advice to help you guys crush your fantasy football leagues. Because so many people go into the draft and they go in with the mentality of, hey, I'm just going to draft on ADP. I know when that player's coming off. I'm just going to draft them, follow the sheep rankings, go with that. Get the magazine, just do that. It's not how you're going to win your leagues, guys. These are 10 practical tips that help me every single year, and this works, guys. This actually works. It's going to help you guys get that optimal roster for fantasy football 2021. So practical top 10 fantasy football draft tips. Before I get into this, guys, make sure you guys do get the 16-round draft solution. Give you all the optimal players to draft in each round, giving you an optimal balanced roster, implementing all of these tips right on a silver platter with you. Now, you're going to have to do some thinking because, again, sometimes it comes down to your gut feeling, your research, your information, but I give you all the optimal players to draft in each round based on ADP, and I walk you through mock drafts, sleepers, breakouts, everything. Get the 16-round draft solution linked it below. Head on over to fantrax.com/FFC and switch over your league, guys. Totally customizable, way better than the 4-letter network platforms. And again, you can import all those platforms. If you're currently on another year-long platform, you can transfer it over to fantrax.com/FFC. And if you guys switch over, even if you sign up, right now, you get entered to win a signed Josh Allen jersey. Go ahead and do that. Fantrax.com/FFC. And lastly, guys, manscaped.com. Use promo code SHOWERLION. Get yourself a Manscaped trimmer. Save yourself 20% by using promo code SHOWERLION. Amazing product, fit and finish, skin safe technology, navigational light. Great product. Keep yourself groomed and clean. Manscaped.com. Promo code SHOWERLION. But again, guys, it's very important. If you guys want to win your leagues, obviously take some notes here, but get that 16-round draft, okay? And of course, if you're new to the channel, click subscribe. Let's get to the show, all right? So, first tip, all right? Top 10 tips to dominate your draft. Number 1, go robust RB. Now, a lot of people are going zero RB, the mainstream. They try to push you towards the wrong way to do things, and that is going zero RB. No, you got to go robust RB. Why? Very simple, guys, and I can't say this enough, and I don't care if I sound like a broken record. You want to secure the most scarce position on the roster because there's literally like 8 to 9 running backs with minimal to no committee where the backup won't be a factor unless obviously the starter gets hurt. It's a very scarce position. There's only one Dalvin Cook, one CMC, one Derrick Henry, one Saquon Barkley, one Zeke Elliott, one Jonathan Taylor, but Jonathan Taylor could have a committee. Cam Akers should be in line for a good year. Najee Harris. There's only a handful of these guys. After that, they're gone. So what happens is if you literally wait till the third round, if you go zero RB, which is a stupid thing to do, and now more people are gravitating to robust RB. Zero RB was kind of like the way to go years ago. That's what they kept pushing. I was against it years ago. But what happens if you don't go robust RB, you're going to be left with question marks. Now, there's a ton of good guys you get in the third round, but there are question marks like Josh Jacobs. I like David Montgomery this year. Apparently, Nagy's saying that Montgomery's going to get a lot of work. Tariq Cohen shouldn't. I don't think he's going to even be starting the season, right? Cohen's not much of a threat. We know Montgomery's the guy. There's value. There's Javonte Williams as a sleeper. There's Michael Carter. There's a ton of guys that could break out, but they're question marks. There's no guarantees even with the first guys, right? Because they could get hurt, but you're kind of guaranteed that volume load in regards like Derrick Henry, right? He's the guy. No one's going to touch him, right? Zeke Elliott, Pollard's there, but you get what I'm saying, right? The other guys are suspects. So bottom line is tip number 1, go robust RB. Believe me, guys, there's a ton of wide receivers later, which we'll talk about later. You need to secure this position. You need to secure it early. Now, a lot of people ask, well, if I'm a 2-quarterback league or super flex, shouldn't I get quarterback? I still go robust RB, and I try to get the first quarterback I can. Like I did a super flex league, and my first quarterback's Matt Ryan. That could work, could not work. But there's a ton of depth at quarterback, but a lot of those guys in that league don't have 2 solid running backs. I do, okay? So go robust RB. Okay, but there's a ton of depth at quarterback, but you still want to anchor an ace quarterback in a 2-quarterback league. Maybe you get that quarterback in second or third round, but try to get a running back at least the first 2 rounds. Okay, I like to get 2 to 3 running backs the first 3 rounds. Okay, tip number 2, guys, anchor your team with an ace quarterback. Kind of going to what I said here. Tip number 2. This is very important. Now with quarterbacks, there's not much volatility, right? You don't get as much volatility as you do with wide receivers because there's split time share with the wide receivers in regards to targets. Running backs, you got split time share with committees. You get injuries more. With quarterbacks, kind of what you see is pretty much what you get barring any type of injury. So I implore you guys to anchor your team with an ace quarterback, but we're going to get to another tip, to tip number 3, where you don't have to overpay. We'll talk about that in a second, but you need an ace quarterback because these guys are big target getters, okay? So you have to have an ace quarterback on your roster. you definitely don't want to, well, we'll get to tip number 3 about overpaying, but you don't want to get like last year, like you don't want to fall in the pit of Lamar Jackson round 2. So that's where you got to be smart, but you need an ace quarterback. So tip number 3, I can't wait. It just leads into tip number 3. Don't overpay. Meaning again, like last year, I went Josh Allen, guys like Russell Wilson round 6, 5, 6, and everybody was getting Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes round 2 or 3. Guys, big waste. Okay. Do not do that. Still get an ace quarterback. Like I like Justin Herbert round 5, 6 this year, but I don't have to overpay to Pat Mahomes round 3, okay? And then you can get a good backup as well. So that's a bonus tip. Get a backup for whatever quarterback you get, but just do not overpay for a quarterback because you're loading up on running backs early, and there's a ton of ace quarterbacks you can get. You anchor your team with that ace solid quarterback in around rounds 5 to 7, okay? You still get a good quarterback, so don't overpay is tip number 3. Tip number 4, wait on wide receivers. I brushed up on this. Guys, there's a ton of wide receiver ones. Literally, after the 3rd round, there's a ton. I mean, I'm doing a sleeper episode, so go back and listen to the sleeper episode. Go back to listen to other episodes that I've done. Get the 16-round drafts, which is why I explain this, but let me give you a couple sleepers. Michael Pittman, DJ Chark, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. There's Gallup there. There's Elijah Moore as a sleeper there. There is a ton. I can't even get into it right now. There's other guys that are going to break up. Probably Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, one of those guys is going to emerge. If you stash a bunch of these wide receivers, you are aiming high on the depth chart and getting yourself an ace wide receiver potentially. Now, you can still get an Adam Thielen for pretty good value without overpaying for a Jefferson. But what I'm trying to tell you is Deontay Johnson, another guy. There's a ton of guys that are immense value at wide receiver without overpaying the 1st-round pick. Now, there's no guarantees of 1st-round pick if you go, I get Devontae Adams, I'm guaranteed. He's due for a decline. We saw that last year with Michael Thomas. Everybody said, Michael Thomas, top 5 pick, first wide receiver off the board. I said, no. Decline's coming, pinnacle year, be careful. Everyone last year said Chris Godwin round 2. I'm like, no, Brady spreads the ball. Do not invest. Not Godwin and Evans, maybe one of them, but both of them aren't finishing top 10. Sure enough, both of them finished outside the top 10, yet everybody was telling you Godwin round 2, based on ADP, Mike Evans round 3. I stayed away from both those guys. I got Jefferson round 8. Jefferson beat them, right? So you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, but there's a ton of value at wide receivers. You stock up on a bunch of them in mid-rounds. And there's a ton of wide receiver ones still available, right? And then you get a bunch of sleepers later on, Amon-Ra St. Brown's, Elijah Moore's of the world, and some of those guys are going to go off. Now you're going to plug in and have really, really good players, which rolls into tip number 5, aim high on the depth chart, okay? So again, ton of depth at wide receiver. But while I'm drafting these wide receivers, tip number 5 for fantasy football draft tip here, big one, aim high on the depth chart. And I don't see it a lot. People don't do this. They don't do this. They get a popular name. So they'll go someone like, I can't even give an example right now because I'm thinking too much off the top of my head here. But they'll go for a Jarvis Landry, for example, a perfect example. Jarvis Landry, who's a good producer. I like him actually ahead of Odell, but he always comes off behind Odell. They'll go Jarvis Landry, and I'll go Elijah Moore, right? Because there's a chance that Odell could beat Jarvis Landry on top of the depth chart. And again, it's a bad example, but it's the first thing that came to my head because Odell kind of busts anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is stick with me. Elijah Moore could be the wide receiver 1. I'll go for that upside mid to late rounds over getting like a backup guy, like a Jerry Jeudy, perfect example. Cortland Sutton is theoretically the wide receiver 1. Could it be Jeudy? Maybe. Or even another example, the Cowboys. People will go Amari Cooper because now everybody's ranking CeeDee Lamb Cooper. I'd rather go Elijah Moore, mid rounds there because Elijah Moore has the opportunity to be the one. I'd rather go DJ Chark over like an Amari Cooper or a CeeDee Lamb because they're in a 3-headed monster where Chark could be the one. And again, I'm just using wide receivers as an example, but you can go running backs as well, right? Aim high on the depth chart. Now, there's different scenarios. That's why I laid out in 60 rounds so much easier, where you got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You're aiming high on the depth chart going Nick Chubb, but I don't want to invest a 1st-round pick in Nick Chubb, so you got to be careful as well when you're aiming high on the depth chart. You got to know who's breathing down below him, okay? But try to always get the top volume getter, the point getter, and that's what you kind of go for. Don't go for the popular name, okay? Aim high on the depth chart. Stay on top. Don't go for the popular name who's a 2 when you could be getting a 1 on the other team. But then you got to look at who's throwing them on the quarterback on that team, who's throwing the ball, the wide receiver, for example, how much volume's there. But bottom line is tip number 5, aim high on the depth chart. Those volume getters, those guys that are get it done, okay? Don't just go for popular names that are 2, 3 on the team that are just higher on ADP based on just because their name, okay? So that's a good secret or a trick here. Tip number 6, okay? look for breakout players. Now, this is where, you've got some secure players. Now you're starting to look for some breakouts. But again, that's going back to aiming high on the depth chart and looking for situations. So tip number 6, look for breakout players, meaning I think everybody kind of does that, but you got to know the situation, right? Justin Jefferson last year, 150 freed up targets were gone. Guys, 150 freed up targets were gone with Diggs being gone. There was a void there. Jefferson came in. I looked at the talent, looked at the opportunity, looked at the quarterback. I'm like, hey, man, that's a good situation here for Jefferson. And I looked for a breakout player, got him in around the 8th round. So it's up to you to do some research. Look for breakout players. Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, years to wow us, we're not wowed. In comes Javonte Williams. You can get him for good value, rounds 4 to 5 in your drafts. Could potentially break out. I'm going to be doing a breakout episode as well, okay? So look for breakout players. Tip number 7, balance your roster. Again, every tip here is going into each other, like I'm leading into the other tip, but balance your roster, meaning you need a balance of breakout players, you need a balance of relatively secure players. So yes, you can get those guys, roll some dice on Elijah Moores or guys like that, but you should have like an Adam Thielen or Deontay Johnson, someone who's a little more guaranteed and secure on your roster that you know is going to produce and has produced before, typically and ideally. Now, I do take some risks, guys, early. I'm going Najee Harris as early as I can this year, but you still want a good balance of your roster, okay? And not only balance of your roster from upside players to high-risk players, right? Or high-risk players to safer players, but also a balance of your roster to make sure that you have depth and a backup plan for a backup plan, okay? Tip number 8, do not follow the sheep in the ADP. It will lead you astray. You've heard me say this before. Outdated magazines, outdated consensus rankings, listening to fluffy podcasts, listening to 4-letter networks, they will not help you win. They don't care if you win your leagues or not. This is the bottom line. They do not care if you win your leagues or not, period. I did a draft secrets video. Check that out. I dive more into this. You can get that if you get 16 rounds. It's an add-on to get. I think it's like $7 or $8 or something. I've added it on to the course, but get the draft secrets course. But again, the bottom line is they don't care. Okay, they just want to make money. They just want to get their draft kit out, cookie cutter based on last year's rankings. They don't care if you actually win. I'm here. I'm actually laying it on the line, telling you optimal players to draft in each round, which players I draft, walking you through our draft, how I would do it, putting everything on the line, and helping you guys win. Okay, that's the bottom line. So don't follow the sheep is tip number 8. Tip number 9, it's kind of a 2-parter. Get the 16-round draft solution. Again, this is a plug for my content here because I want you guys to win. And part of that is have a backup plan for a backup plan. That's also tip number 9, because in 16 rounds, it's like a belt and suspenders. You can have a backup. One quarterback fails, you've got a good backup, right? Your running back fails, you went robust RB. Wide receiver fails, man, you've got a whole whack of wide receivers in that are high on the depth chart on your team, on your roster. So again, guys, get the 16-round draft solution, linked it below. You're going to be very, very, very confident going in the draft and light years ahead of the competition. I think I did a post the other day on Amon-Ra St. Brown on Detroit, and people are like, oh man, I had to look that guy up. We talk about this in 16 rounds. It's like nothing. You know who these guys are, but the casual people in your league will have no idea what you're talking about, okay? Now, I'm not saying Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit is going to be like a top 10 wide receiver, but at least you're aware of him. You can stash him, and there's some upside there, okay? That's just an example. And tip number 10, anticipate. And I'm talking everything. I'm talking particularly in drafts. Like you're in a draft and you've done all this research, you've done all the homework, and some player that you like gets sniped. Anticipate that that guy's that you really want is coming off that round, and anticipate that if he does come off that round, you have a backup plan for a backup plan, going back to tip number 9. So anticipate the worst case scenarios. Anticipate that maybe that running back that you have been dreaming about the entire summer is going to be gone. So you need to anticipate and have a backup plan, and just don't fall in love with players too much. Just always have a backup plan and anticipate that he could get sniped and what your plan is for that as well, okay? So there it is, guys. 10, you got to go back and listen to it again, but those are 10 practical fantasy football draft tips that are really going to help you. The top 10 fantasy football draft tips that are going to help you guys crush your leagues this season and beyond. You can use this as practical advice. It's universal, okay? There might be some variances based on, whatever year you're doing it, but this is definitely going to help you, okay? All right, subscribe, thumbs up, and get the 16-round draft solution, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the tips, and if you have any tips yourself, please share them with the Council Nation community. I appreciate you guys. Go crush your drafts. We'll talk soon.